Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And today I'm joined by one of my longtime friends who I'm finally meeting in person, face to face for one of the first times, Dawn Boynton of Seattle Bride Hair. And I want to thank you so much for coming in. I know we've kind of followed each other online for years, and thank you for coming in today on kind of a wet Seattle day and making the drive. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do.
Great. Thank you, Reed. Thanks for having me. And it's awesome to finally meet you in person. I've seen you around the circle in the wedding community, which I love. I'm with Seattle Bride Hair. I do on-site hair and makeup for all special events, not just weddings. I have been licensed since I was 16, which means I've only been doing it for 2 years. Haha. This is my 29th year of being licensed, and I love it. I truthfully can say I love it every single year more and more.
And it's remarkable. Like I just see you like everywhere posting and being, really visible. And I think that that's awesome. And it's obviously a credit. Do you find, is that hard to keep up on? Do you enjoy doing that? How does that work?
I do enjoy doing it. My days are so long. I actually do commit at least 3 times a week to doing social media. Most of my business now is referral based, and I found that social media really helps that. And, like you, I know you, I feel like I know you really well. And this is the first time meeting face to face because of social media. So I actually really, really enjoy posting. One of my activities is writing. And so I love to write as well.
And it's funny, you said, I have to get my hair cut here later on. And you had actually just worked at the salon that I go to in West Seattle for years, you said. So,
yeah.
So talk about kind of, how did we get into this? So you've been doing this a long time. Was this always like, did you grow up as kind of a passion, or how did that start?
Yeah, I have been styling my mom's hair since I was 5 in the living room while she watched Young and the Restless. She would sit down and I would braid her hair and curl her hair. My biggest dream when I was little, probably 7 years old, I have a cousin that lives in LA. Her name's Trixie. And I always wanted to move to LA and do the soap opera's hair. That was when I was 7. And I just always remained a passion. I think came out of the womb wanting to do hair and makeup.
That's awesome. Why the soap operas hair?
I think it's because my mom was watching The Young and Restless, and I just thought they were so pretty and flawless and timeless, and and to move to LA. That's every girl's dream someday.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then, so you grow up a little bit, and you started going to school, and did that. You kind of discover that passion to keep going, or? Yeah.
So I always wanted to do hair, and I wanted to go work at the best salon in Olympia. So I actually swept hair at Continental Hair Design, which was the best salon I can think of when I was 15. And then through the grace of God, my high school sweetheart he fell into contact with somebody that worked at Jean Juarez. And I actually had never heard of Jean Juarez. And they called me up and they said, you need to go to advanced training. And I was only 16, never heard of Jean Juarez, looked it up. And when I was 17, I started driving up to Jean Juarez. I was commuting with this guy, who was my friend's boyfriend, who had to be at work at 5 a.m. So I would sit outside Jean Juarez advanced training and wait for them to open up for 2 hours. I just really wanted to work for the best and be the best. And Jean himself and his company really benefited my direction and career. And I really owe a lot to Jean himself.
That's crazy. I grew up over in Bellevue, and we were adjacent to a really nice neighborhood. And so we would always go through and like look at Christmas lights or whatever. And I remember that his house, or I don't know if it was his or one of his houses over there, but it was like this big, massive kind of on the hill. And my mom would say like, oh, that's Jim, where's his house? And I was like, wow, that's nuts. Like that this is right, down the street from Bill Gates and all that. And it's crazy. Was that like nerve wracking at such a young age to do that, or?
No, I remember the first time I was in Seattle and I literally twirled around. I was so excited. I just felt like a girl in a big city, and I could just do anything. Like I could accomplish anything. And so I was just really excited. And, I grew up out in Yelm, Washington, and Lacey as well. And I just always wanted to get out into a bigger city. And so, no, I was super excited. I just really, really, really wanted to, get out and, just make people beautiful and happy.
Yeah, that had to be a big shock from coming from Yelm up to Seattle. Was that nerve-wracking, or you said you were just excited?
I was just excited. Yeah, I just really wanted out of Yelm. And so that was a good way to go. And I just really was so in awe of all the people working around me and all the hairdressers that were going through advanced training as well. And so much talent around me. And so it pushed me to be better.
And so when you say like advanced training, so what, I don't know anything about.
Sure, yeah. So you get your licensed, and back in the day to work for Gene Juarez, because he was the very best. He sold this company about 12 years ago. When he owned it, they had advanced training. It's almost like a master's program in college. You actually have to go through Gene Juarez advanced training to work for his salons, and you have to graduate. I think my class starting was 60 people, and 7 people graduated. You basically had to learn all over again. It's the British and French way to cut hair. And they were very, very strict on how you styled, how you cut, how you dressed, everything. So I just really, like I said, I just really loved the environment. I loved being in Seattle, and yeah.
That's crazy. And so how long did that program last for?
It was, I think it went by hours, and it had a certain checklist of how many haircuts and how many styling and how much makeup application you had to do. And I literally started advanced training the day after I graduated high school. And I finished the day before my birthday, which was in September. So I went through it really quickly. I had this goal of I wanted to work for Gene Juarez before I turned 18. So I did one day.
That's crazy. So you're 18.
Mm-hmm.
You're working for, like the premier salon in the area.
Yeah.
So walk me through that then. Kind of how did we progress from there?
Well, that actually was kind of a stumbling block for me my very first year. I thought, I'm 18. I kind of had an ego. I thought, I was going to make all this money and I was the best. And I was working with all these older people that had such great careers. And I'm an introvert as well. And it was really hard for me to even open up and speak to these clients that came into the Gene Juarez. I actually froze up for the first year. And I almost got sent back to training because they wanted me to learn better communication skills. And because I was just super scared and intimidated. But then a couple people I have to thank really mentored me and took me under their wing and took me to lunch. And I actually watched them do hair and watched their dialogue. And so I got over that roadblock.
Well, and that obviously relates even to today and, doing, large scale events and weddings and stuff,
Yeah.
The hair and makeup people really do kind of like dictate, the pace of the morning.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Well, no. And, and how the mood is and how everybody is. I mean, if you go in and, cause you guys are there, long before the photo and video and everybody. And so it really does kind of like set that tone, you know?
Yeah.
So then you're cutting hair. Like, did you have interest in doing weddings and events, or you
did. Mm-hmm.
So talk about like kind of how did we progress from there then?
Yeah, at first I was specializing in ethnic hair. I have really thick curly hair myself. You can't really tell, but I do. And I was working in Tacoma, and I just really wanted to branch out and do ethnic hair, which I still do a lot of. And then I started putting their hair up, ethnic women, for their balls that would go to the military balls and stuff, because I was working in Tacoma. And I just started having a passion for updos. They call them updos, or airwaves. It's styling. And I found it fascinating that a lot of hairdressers don't like to do it to this day. And I don't know, I just really loved it. And then I was looking for a makeup artist to kind of come on board with me to do makeup. And I wasn't really clicking with their style versus my style. So then I taught myself makeup, and I found a passion for that as well. And a lot of brides ask me, do I like hair or do I like makeup better? And I honestly can't say which one I like better.
So you start kind of evolving into this full kind of dual faceted service. So then have you been doing obviously weddings for a long time? Like, what was that kind of like entry into that, and how did that work? Was that kind of nerve wracking to go to that, or did you feel experienced? Like, how did you start booking weddings then?
Sure. I was a designer at Gene Juarez. So at Gene Juarez, you have to specialize. You can either cut and style, or you can color. And so I knew that I didn't want to just cut hair. I also wanted to cut and style. So the front desk, I asked them, I said, can you start booking me with brides? And it was like one at a time, really slowly. And then I got my confidence up, and I went to a lot of classes, a lot of advanced classes on brides. And I remember doing my first wedding, and it was so exhilarating after I was done with it. She cried. She was so excited about it, and just spun out of control from there.
Yeah, you always kind of get a mix when you ask people about like their first wedding, if it was, it's either a home run or a ground out. But so that was, if you felt at ease with that.
Yeah, yeah. And most of my clients were my clients. I'd been cutting their hair for years. I actually have a client named Erin McNamara. I've been doing her hair since she was 7, and I did her wedding about, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. She's now an attorney. So some of these people I've been doing their hair forever. And so it's kind of cool. I used to kid with Erin and her sister Megan about doing their hair for their prom someday. And here I am doing their hair for their wedding. So it was just building a rapport with my own existing clients and then branching out and getting confidence to meet new people I've never met before.
Yeah, I bet probably 18, you kind of going in, like you probably never thought that here you would be seeing these women kind of go through. Do you think that people, I don't know if that's something that even people really appreciate, like when they if they're selecting someone to do whatever, that you will kind of be with them through a good portion of their life.
Right.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So I even, I recently did a wedding in December with Kate from G Square Photography. And we did a wedding, and she introduced me to this bride named Mandy. And Mandy came to me a year ago. She was planning her wedding, and just her excitement. And she and I grew her hair out, and we had a vision for her hair and makeup. And her and I are really good friends. She painted me something. She painted me this beautiful tree that's actually hanging in my salon now. And she gave it to me on her wedding day. And so it's not just keeping old relationships, it's also making new relationships as well. And, I'm convinced that Mandy will be in my life forever.
That's funny. First off, Kate still needs to come on the podcast. We've been talking about it, I think, since I launched this a year ago. B, it's so funny just talking about a vision for your hair. And I would never tell this to my hair person, but I had a mohawk when Dorothy and I got engaged. And so we had talked about, growing it out, and I had thought I would have a mohawk when we got married, and Dorothy said, no, you're not going to do that. So I had grown out, it was like 13 months, and we were growing it out and whatever, and then cutting it. And then finally it was like, I think I was going to go in like the Thursday before the wedding. And she gave me like the shortest haircut like I've ever had. And I was like, we've been talking about this for like 12 months. No. And it was fine. Like Dorothy loved it. I mean, that's all I didn't really care. But I just couldn't believe, I was like, wow, like we've really been planning this for this long. And then it was like totally. But no, it's good to have people like that in your life. So then, so you start booking weddings through Jean Juarez.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so then you were there with them for a long time.
Yeah, I was there for 16 years. I was invited to a private party with Jean one spontaneous evening, and I didn't know what it was about. And I went, and there was, I don't know, probably 60 to 100 people there from the company. And he announced that he was selling. And I actually was getting a divorce, and I was looking for maybe a change in my life anyway. So all in 1 week, I quit my job at Jean Juarez after 16 years. I cut off 3 feet of hair. I traded in my car, and I moved all in 1 week. So it was just full of, change and different seasons. And that's when I worked for the salon in West Seattle. And they were awesome. I went to the owner and I said, hey, I want to do on-site hair and makeup. And she said, that's great. Go ahead and do it. And so I just always have, been so grateful to Rachel Carlin for letting me just spread my wings and not try to shelter me into her little bubble at the salon. And so that's when I started really doing on-site hair and makeup.
Yeah, that must have been a huge change. I mean, 16 years is it's a really long time.
That was my family, yeah.
That's crazy. And so then were you living in West Seattle then when you were working here?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy the neighborhoods here? And
oh, I love West Seattle. Yeah, it's my home away from home. I moved to Tacoma 3 years ago, but I still come up every Wednesday to see my friends and my family and my son. I love West Seattle. Yeah, the community is amazing.
So now you're in West Seattle working, and then you're continuing to book weddings. And so then because now how did you transition kind of to doing your own thing? Right.
So I moved to Tacoma 3 years ago, and I was doing Seattle bride hair, and I was working at the salon in West Seattle. And I kind of jumped around about 3 or 4 times to different salons, and all my clients that followed me from from West Seattle down to Tacoma, they were probably getting a little frustrated because I kept moving. Thank you for staying with me. And I had a studio out back, and I thought, oh my goodness, why don't I just work for myself? So last February, I opened up my own studio, Studio A, and that's where I do all my bride trials, and I started working for myself, and I couldn't be more than happy. I'm so, so happy that I did that.
Was that, scary to kind of,
yeah.
Talk about that. Cause we've had people on here, some that, still work full time and some that work part and some, a wide gamut across the board. Like talk about that transition for you and what was that like?
It just clicked. It just really clicked. I had a lot of free time. My son is going to West Seattle High School. I was commuting him up to West Seattle High School every day from Tacoma, and then I would go pick him up. And then he decided to just stay in West Seattle. So that's freed up a lot of space. And when you free up a lot of space, that gives me a lot more free time to think. So I was really excited about it. I had my boyfriend and my dad help me open up the salon. So I had a lot of good support. I don't think I was ever really nervous. I always do things when it feels right, and it felt right.
Cause even if you're working like in the salon, like you kind of do your own thing, right? But within kind of this framework.
Right.
Right. And so then to kind of like remove that.
Yeah, exactly. I had a lot of pushback from certain people about like my pricing, because I do Brazilian blowouts and they're pretty inexpensive, and they wanted me to raise my prices or just, little things. I loved working for Jeanware. I worked with 150 women, and I still love them all. They were amazing. But it's also really freeing to work all by myself too. I can hear myself talk. I get to choose my own music, and it does get a little lonely sometimes, but it's also really freeing just to be by myself.
Talk about then kind of now branding on your own and Seattle Bride Hair, and kind of how is that, and obviously for years, but now kind of expanding on your own, like how has that gone and what have you learned kind of in doing that?
Yeah, I owned the Seattle Bride Hair domain name for years and years and years. It was weird. I was just sitting on it, and I didn't use it when I was working at the salon in West Seattle. And one day I decided I'm going to start a website. My very dear best girlfriend for years and years and years, her name is Cami McNamara, and she designs my website. And she does it pretty inexpensive. She's amazing. And it all fell together. Then I had a client that does logos, and she wanted to design my logo for me. And I went on social media, and I just started branching out to people like you, Reed, and other people to help me. And it just went from there. It was pretty easy and pretty flawless. And I can't thank the wedding community enough.
Yeah, it's hard because, and we talk on here a lot about like, someone that is like a good photographer might not necessarily like know anything about business, or like
Right.
you might be better at whatever. Like, is that something that you still struggle with, or you just get people that you trust to kind of like fill in those gaps? Like, how do you look at that?
I'm pretty savvy as far as business. I have a lot of friends that are in business, so they taught me a lot. So I did trademark my name, Seattle Bride Hair. So that is trademarked. I want to make sure that was protected. And if I have a question, I don't hesitate to ask the right people. And I just have a really good group of people around me that really help me out a lot.
Yeah, talk about the Seattle wedding community kind of in general. I mean, we've had people that have been vendors in other areas that have moved here, or, back and forth or whatever. I mean, do you find it pretty inviting here? And what do you think about kind of just Seattle in general and the vendors that work together here?
Yeah, I am just blown away with the community. Even being in Tacoma, I still get so much support from the Seattle community in general, and now I'm Tacoma and Kitsap, all of them. I haven't had any problems, knock on wood. I haven't had any problems with anybody. Everybody's so sweet and so inviting, and just I'm baffled. I'm trying to think right now of one person I've had issues with, but everybody's so awesome.
That's funny. Talk about kind of the process in terms of working with you, if for an event or a wedding, if someone was, curious about that.
Yeah. So I'm going to be doing an open house soon on Holly Farms on the 20th and the 17th. And they located me through Stephanie Wall's photography. And then I'm doing another one at the Lookout Lodge. Those people are amazing, amazing. Cricket is amazing. So working with vendors, I feel like if you just are really good at communicating, it's no problem.
What are some things that you wish like more people knew, brides that are booking, kind of pitfalls, things that you're kind of constantly educating people about that you wish maybe the industry people knew better?
Yeah, great question. I think that I love my brides, but I want them to know that they can put their trust in us as far as a timeline. If we say that this is how much time it takes, this is what time you have to get up in the morning and get ready, it's not our first rodeo. I know that they're excited for their day, and I've had so many brides say, "Oh, really? 6 a.m. I want to sleep in." Guess what? You're not going to want to sleep in on your wedding day. It's just not going to happen. And then, everybody stays in their lane so well with our vendors. Just really trust your vendor. Like, just listen to them. Know that's what they do for a living. And it's going to be amazing.
Talk about kind of the style that you kind of specialize in or prefer to do, in terms of hair and makeup and kinds of, if it's more natural or kind of how that works.
Yeah, I can do natural and very glamorous. The one thing that I do a really good consultation. I don't book a wedding unless I do a trial. They need to come in for their hair and makeup. And so I kind of go over, if somebody wants to wear their hair up, I ask them, do you ever wear your hair up? You want to look just like yourself on your wedding day, and you want to feel good in your wedding photos. If somebody is very natural and, outdoorsy, and then they show me a picture of very glam or Kim Kardashian, I try to kind of steer them away from that. But I'm good at either look, really. I just want it to match their style as well.
We talk a lot here about being licensed and whatever you're doing and kind of having that, being held accountable and kind of talk about, do you still see that's a pretty pervasive issue in the industry with people not having the proper education, licenses and stuff? Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I try to keep my nose out of stuff like that. I know that you do have to have a license to do hair if the hair is wet. A lot of people go around and just style their hair and use a curling iron. And so anybody can say that they're a hairstylist, but you probably do want to see if your hairstylist is licensed, and not just somebody that thinks that they can curl their friend's hair. And I do see it, but I just, like I said, stay in my lane.
Do you enjoy kind of being in the actual kind of like getting ready wedding, that whole process now? Does it feel kind of more like you're back at the salon with people around? Like, do you enjoy kind of being in that environment? And talk about kind of like how you approach the wedding day and your feelings about that.
Yeah, I love being around it. I am told by a lot of my friends I'm a recovering introvert because I can talk and get along with one-on-one people. But if it's a party, I kind of will shut up and let everybody take over as far as the conversation goes. That being said, sometimes it gets really chaotic and I have to keep everybody focused on, okay, it's your time to do hair. It's your time to do makeup. Stop drinking the mimosa. Sit down. But I love it. I really, really enjoy all the energy. I meet so many people from so many different places. I love when they do sit down and I'm one-on-one. I love hearing about them and hearing how they know the bride. And I always tell my brides, there's always going to be one person, though, that one person that's going to stress you out. And as soon as I can figure out who that one person is, I actually help the bride out. And I get to know that one person and kind of keep them away from the bride.
Isn't that funny how there's always, same with like bridal party or like bridesmaids and groups, and like there's always one person that like isn't paying attention or doesn't want to do it or like has like never had their photo taken before.
Yeah. And it's funny. And I say to every bride during their trial, who's the one person? And they kind of look at me baffled and they're like, oh, you're right. There is that one person. And I always let my brides know that, hey, and it's not going to be flawless. There's actually going to be one major thing that's going to happen during your day too. And just know that you're going to be married the next day and it doesn't really matter.
It's got to take an incredible amount of trust for like the brides, with anybody that does their hair and makeup, but like, do you then find like you have like that much deeper connection, or kind of talk about kind of taking that trust and kind of like, whether it's 10 months out that they book or whatever, and kind of like knowing, and then in terms of day of kind of delivering and making sure they feel good.
Yeah. I always try to keep my communication open with my brides. I've had brides commit to a wedding day 2 years in advance, and I don't want to forget about them. So I'm always like, hi, I'm here. I try to get as many photos of them. I actually, I will stalk you on social media and look you up. And then I want them to send me photos, and I want to see if they correlate. Like, do you really have Kim Kardashian hair when you have 3 hairs on your head? And so I really gain a rapport with my clients. The one tough thing, though, sometimes is then getting to know the bridesmaids instantly and earning their trust right away, and knowing, hey, it's going to be okay. You can listen to the bride. I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one thing. Like I walk in cold a lot and meet them, but like I don't have to interact with them for an hour or whatever. I mean, talk about, and there's someone like you said that kind of struggles with being an introvert or not. Like, is that a big challenge that you kind of work through every time, or are you kind of used to it now?
I'm really used to it now. Yeah, it's no problem. People are people. We all put our pants on the same way. And so I always think of metaphors like that. And I just know that person's me. That person might be nervous too, or that person wishes they're getting married and they're not, So I always, if somebody has a really bad attitude, I always know that there's a good reason why, and it's not about me.
What kind of keeps you motivated now? I mean, it's been so long, doing this and, through a bunch of different kind of, different, same field, but different kind of outposts or whatever. I'm terrible words, but what kind of keeps you motivated every day to get up and keep kind of doing it and reaching out and growing and that sort of thing?
Well, 2 things, my brides that really have appreciated me and send me photos, and, those people really confirm why I do what I do. Like my bride a couple months ago, when she saw her hair and makeup, she started crying for the good. She started crying. She was so happy. And that just warms my heart. I also really believe in continuing education. So I go to a lot of classes during the year. Working for Gene Juarez, he really opened my eyes to all the really big names. I was in a program, the Sam McKnight program, which they had 5,000 applicants and they only accepted 200, and I was one of them. And Sam McKnight does like all the covers for Vogue magazine. He's British. And, I always, if I'm looking for an inspiration or I can't find why I do what I do, I actually will look at somebody bigger and better, because there's always going to be somebody bigger and better. It's crazy. Like, I mean, I think like in terms of like technology and stuff, like we always kind of need to keep up, but like there is always like new continuing education. And a lot of it is like you have to travel to or go to different places. Like, is that hard to kind of keep that balance between working and learning, or how do you approach that? I believe that learning is part of working. And so I'm always like, I'm a constant thinker. I think on how to do things. And so I actually love, one of my pastimes is my friends come into the salon and I practice doing hair and makeup like I'm 5 years old again. And of course they love to do it. And so I'm always practicing. I have 2 dolly heads that look out windows, so intruders will think that there's people at my house. But they're mannequin heads, and I'm always practicing on them. And I'm kind of a little girl in an adult body when it comes to inspiration.
What is it about weddings in general that kind of attracts you, besides just like having like a bride or someone that you connect with? Is it kind of being in the story of love, or kind of the great, like, do you look at that, or you just focus on those personal connections you're making no matter what the event is? Yeah,
I love love. And I also I feel so honored to think that I might be the last person she sees before she sees her groom. Like, it's so exciting to me. That first look photo, my hair, my makeup, that's that. And he is seeing that. And that excites me. And that might sound, I don't know, egotistical, but I love that. When I say first look, I actually almost start to cry every single time.
And it's hard too, I think, for like hair and makeup, because you do, like, it's such an integral part of the day, but then like you only really do, you might be there for a little bit of like the first look or doing a little touch up, but like you miss out on a lot of stuff, right? I mean, then you kind of have to look at the photos or whatever to kind of get that. Do you find that? Is that hard?
Because they're usually in a bathrobe when I leave, and they're going to be getting into their dress, and they get into their dress 5 minutes after I leave. And so, it's so exciting to see it all come together. And after I'm done, I literally sit in my car for 5 minutes and I'm just beaming. I'm so excited for every single bride. I'm excited for them and their wedding day.
Does it ever get old, or is it always exciting?
It's always exciting. Yeah. Every once in a while there's that one bride, but I'm still excited for them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny just because I've had the same conversation with like florists and stuff. Like, they drop everything off and then you go and like you just miss a lot of like, we get to experience a lot more, more of that, it's just kind of different coins of whatever. So it's interesting that like so many like different types of vendors can have like such different interactions, you know what I mean? And kind of experience different parts of the day. I always think that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. It'd be fun to have a vendor party someday after a big wedding.
Yeah, right. What did everybody think about that?
Yeah.
When you're not working on weddings specifically, what other events and things do you work on and how do you kind of spend your time otherwise?
I'm a crisis counselor on a text line, and I do that on Fridays. I believe that everybody's rent here on earth is giving back, and so I try to give back as much as possible. I used to cut hair for the homeless. I always try to take my trades or my talents and put it towards the good. I know crisis counseling is not hair and makeup, but it is communicating with other people and making them feel good. So that's what I love to do. I read a lot because I have to charge my engines again. And I go on a walk almost every single day, a long walk. And I listen to podcasts or inspirational books on tape.
This crisis, how long have you been doing that now? That's fascinating.
Yeah, it'll be 2 years in May. Yeah, I had to go through an intense background check and training that took about 3 months. And it's a text line. Kids nowadays, they don't talk on the phone anymore. So you text in when you're in crisis. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but how did that inspire you? Did you just wake up one day and decide, or did you hear about this, or how did that?
Yeah. So, I had a couple youngsters, I won't get too much into it, that were very, they attempted suicide. And so I wanted to give back. And my brother's a police officer. And I told him, I said, these are my needs. I used to work in pediatrics, in intensive care volunteering. And like I said, I used to cut hair for the homeless. And I said, Dwayne, I want to somehow give back with suicide or helping young kids feel better about themselves. And he told me about this program, and that's how I got into it.
I just think that's fascinating. And I had no idea that they did the text line now.
Yeah. So on my computer, it has a queue, and it tells me how many people are waiting to hear from me or a crisis counselor. Sometimes it gets all the way up to 96 people, which is freaky. And so I just type away on my little keyboard and they're texting in on their phone. That's
crazy. Well, I think that's great. I mean, I think just in terms of like, obviously you doing that, but then B, like the technology that exists for that.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool. Cause I even not that my brother needed, but like he wouldn't be like calling in and being,
right,
he would, you want to text, or younger brother wanted to like text in and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you also have your real estate license, right?
I do have my real estate license. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
So what inspired that?
I've had it for 6 years now. I used to own a lot of rentals here in West Seattle, and I just felt like, I'm just as educated as all my real estate agent friends. Sorry, you guys. I love you. I think you do an amazing job. But it was almost a challenge to me because it had also to do with a lot of math. And I've always been challenged at math, even though my boyfriend is amazing at math. He'll laugh when he hears this. And so your real estate license, has a lot to do with math. And I challenged myself and I got an A on the course and I passed right away. So it was almost like I ran a marathon once. I just wanted to see if I can do it, and I did it.
So do you still do anything with it, or you just have it?
I have it, and I actually refer out all my transactions to a friend of mine named Rebecca, because I just don't have time to do all the paperwork anymore.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I was going to say, because it's a lot of different balls to balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you kind of like, it just seems like anything you want to do, like you kind of figure it out and do it. Like talk about kind of that motivation and kind of like keeping going and trying new things like that.
Yeah, it's just been my personality. Like one day I'd never ran 10 seconds in my life. I swear. I probably in high school told the PE teacher I had cramps or something. But one day I was inspired by one of my clients that ran the New York City Marathon. And I signed up, and I told my son, I forgot how old he was, probably 10 at the time. And I said, I'm going to run the New York City Marathon. And he looked at me and goes, I know you will. I know you, Mom. And that was motivation enough. So I ran every single day from June to November 7th. I didn't even take any breaks. I trained myself, and I actually don't like running. So I also believe that there's actually a really good book called The One Thing. You really need to focus on one thing that you love to do and do that great. And so a few years back, I was doing 5 different jobs and I was just kind of struggling. And I decided, no, I'm just going to do one job and do it really well. And so I stick with hair and makeup.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. That's a great way. What's it like kind of having a teenage son? Is that fun? Is that challenging?
My son and I, if you ask any of my friends, we have a really special relationship. He and I are very, very, very close. He can talk to me about anything. He's already texted me 6 times this morning. I don't believe in being his best friend because I am his mom. He's had a lot of difficulties in his life, and he's always come right to me, and we've worked through it. And he's a very strong, smart kid, and he's amazing. I've never not liked having a teenage son or a toddler, or I told him today, I said, I just love you unconditionally, no matter what.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
As someone, I'm very close with my mom. I appreciate those sentiments because I know that, my mom probably feels similarly about that. Kind of before we go here, I want to talk about, you've been doing this so long, hair and makeup and seeing all these things. Like what trends do you kind of see now, or what kinds of things do you see coming back? And I don't know this because I just like take pictures of it, but I want to talk about kind of like your thoughts in terms of like the current landscape and how things are going. And like, do you feel like, what do you think about that?
That's a great question. I think it's crazy how trends do come and go. 1 year, if I did one more side bun, I was going to throw up. It seems like every bride fixates on one style every year. Right now it's a half up, half down, which 4 years ago, nobody wanted their hair half up, half down. Braids came in probably, I would say 8 years ago, and I thought it'd probably only last a year, and they're still hot. They're still hot and amazing. Even venues, it seems like everybody wanted to get married in a field, and now everybody wants to get married in a barn and drink out of mason jugs. So it's really fascinating. As far as where I see it going, the natural look, I think more natural look, just accentuating everybody's beauty. I think people are embracing themselves rather than trying to do airbrush. Airbrush was such a hot thing. And now it's just really pretty, beautiful look, which I embrace and I love.
Yeah, is it, I guess, because I grew up kind of in the news where a lot of airbrushing is still big and people kind of, that we would actually have just like, I don't know how they did it, like jet kind of things in the bathroom but it was almost like built in, like it was weird.
Yeah,
like,
looks like an air compressor.
Yeah, so I mean, is that not a thing anymore?
I haven't had too many requests for it anymore. It was such a thing about 3 years ago. And my analogy, I know how to do airbrushing, but I tell my clients, I said, you're a piece of art. Do you want to be sprayed like a car, or do you want to be hand painted like a Picasso? And that's how I look at it. It's like I can go and put foundation where I need to put foundation, concealer where I need to put concealer, really look at your face and help you, enhance what you have. Or do you want me to spray a bunch of foundation on your face?
Yeah, because I think the big thing, right, was when it came out and it was like, at least I know in news, like we were getting like HD and like the cameras were getting better. And so is that not, people don't care about that anymore? Is the makeup better now that we
the makeup, yeah. It has to do with the foundation you use and the powder, make sure it's HD ready and all that. So yeah, all my makeup is ready for the camera. Yeah. And
then I'm sure you have to keep kind of keeping up on what new products and things. How do you find out about that stuff? Just kind of go into the education, or? Yeah,
education. My son has a teenage daughter who he's been dating for 2 years. She's actually my notarized daughter. That's a long story too. But I asked her, the teenagers know so much about, even Snapchat and videos. And so if I really want to be educated, I'll ask a teenage girl.
So now you're in Tacoma now, you have your salon, Ciala Bride Hair. Like, what's the next kind of goal now in terms of growth over the next 1 to 3 to 5 years? Where do you kind of see growing and challenges in that?
Yeah, I'm going to move my studio. Hopefully, I want to move my studio into my basement, and then make my studio into a Airbnb, because I don't know. I just feel like I'm all by myself in that house, and I just want some energy and give back. And so I want to make that into a rental. And so I'm going to be moving my studio and redecorating, which I love to decorate. And maybe focusing more on brides. Right now I work 6 days a week. I work in the salon as well. And just be real picky and choosy on whose hair I'm cutting and take on more weddings.
I always ask this, what kinds of brides do you find that you attract and that are attracted to you and that you like to work with?
Awesome question. I take on all weddings of all ages, but I feel like I'm attracted more to maybe people my age. Yeah, I can relate with them more, I guess, maybe. Second weddings. I love doing second weddings because maybe the expectation isn't so high and not so dramatic.
I will say the weddings that we have that are either second or just a little older, even like late 30s or 40s, 50s, like they are a lot more fun because I do think it's a lot more like what they want to do and not like, oh, my mom wants
exactly. Yeah, my mom is paying for this. I have to do it. Yes, exactly.
So you find that as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, the younger girls, I love them. I love working with them and their sorority sisters, but it's just a different thought process. They put so much pressure on themselves for the day of to make everything perfect. I had a bride who started crying because the head of her roses were too big. And, I just wanted to say, nobody knows how big the rose needs to be. Yeah, she was just putting so much pressure and it's sad sometimes.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I want everybody to enjoy their day. And I keep going back to the wedding that I did in December. I swear she had the most fun. She had just a great time. It was such an awesome, and because she didn't put pressure on herself.
Do you think that we're going to continue in that? Do you think that people are going to be a little more kind of free, kind of doing their own thing? Or do you think it's always going to kind of be like what mom and dad want?
Yeah, I think both. Just because it just depends on, like I said, the age or even the culture, sometimes the culture. I think it'll probably always be like that. And that's okay. I mean, I have an analogy that Gene taught me so long ago. He told me to be a swan, and that's paddle really vigorously under the water and just keep gliding on the top. That's what you need to show people. And I love that analogy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today. It's been so fun getting to finally meet you in person.
Yeah.
And do that after seeing your face online for so many years. It's been awesome. If people want to learn more about you and hair and makeup services, what would you have them do and check out?
Probably my website, which is super easy, seattlebridehair.com. Not bridal, but bride, seattlebridehair.com. All my information's on there. My phone number's on there. My email's on there. Yeah. That's probably the best way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Reed.